Hi guys, welcome to the 99th episode of the Online Tennis Podcast. Joined again by Gavin MacMillan, who was on the Wimbledon men's preview with us. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the other side, the women's, talk a little bit about some of the shots of the favourites of the tournament, Iga Swiatek, Rybakina, Sabalenka. Gavin, of course, joined us earlier in the year. He is Aryna Sabalenka's biomechanics trainer, helped her with her serve for the Australian Open, of course, a victory there. So I'm talking to somebody with plenty of knowledge. Gavin, where should we start? I was thinking, if you don't mind, number one in the world, serve's always been a bit of a question mark. Iga Swiatek has never been that good on grass. I think this is a very interesting place to start. There have been various series. There's the movement. She likes to slide on that backhand. That's how she defends on that side. The serve's been nowhere near as good as the other two aforementioned. What are your thoughts? What's going on with the serve in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just she does a lot of things right, but the right arm, the way she brings it back, it comes back, it opens, then it drops in here, and then it's up, and so you're not maximizing your power because you're not maximizing the internal rotation of your right arm, and it's typical. I mean, it's a lot of anybody that doesn't naturally grow up throwing. I grew up naturally, being throwing a baseball, throwing a football, and then was taught not to do that playing tennis. And always like anybody that played with me would tell you, like, my serve was the biggest problem, and yet throwing was so easy for me. And when you look, the women, like, they don't really grow up throwing, and so it's a foreign, even more of a foreign, motion that way. I think where she gets more in trouble, like on the grass, she's hitting it more with a lot of slice off the first serve a lot of time. So she's all right off that. It's more off the second where she can get in trouble and people can attack it. And Rybakina for sure can do that. But when the ball sits for somebody like Rybakina, she's going to tattoo it. And so if the second serve isn't hurting her, and specifically if it isn't getting out of her strike zone, because when she's feeling it off the forehand side, she hurts you. You can see that in the Wimbledon last year when she finally got control of her emotions and then took Jabeur apart essentially. And when she's again serving well, it's a great 1-2 punch, right? It's what Aryna brings to the table when she's feeling good off her serve. Like, she's a phenomenal fighter when she's hitting her forehand well and confident with it. She's just a tough out. And Iga's, off grass, they'll talk a lot about her grip off her forehand. And so she needs it in a certain place to be able to really hit it effectively. Coco at the French obviously was trying to get the ball up on her a lot and was trying to play with a lot of spin, trying to get it out of her comfort zone. And she was getting some errors out of that. But then once the pressure of the moment started settling in the ball, it was tougher for Gauff to do that. Iga just took control from there. The grass doesn't allow her to get away with any of the so-called flaws you may have off your forehand. And again, it goes back to what was great in the previous decades about playing on all the different surfaces, because you had to have the skill to be able to hit the ball off low slices off the grass that stayed down versus clay where you're not seeing that much. And in the old days you could just come in off virtually anything. The ball stayed down. It was a tough pass, right? Now that's a different story, and you can hurt her a little bit off the forehand, especially with pace, because the way her grip is, she needs a little bit more time.
Yeah.
Whereas Rybakina really doesn't. She really is pretty solid off that side. If anything, sometimes just goes for too much. So I think, historically she's had trouble on that surface, but she's only 22 and is a phenomenal competitor, obviously. So you've got to think that she's doing her best to adjust and that she's going to address these things, because she's when you look how she approaches it, being around these tournaments and stuff, and how professional she is and trying to address all these things. And it's tough to figure out the skill sets to be able to win on all these different surfaces. I think that if she improves her second serve to where it's not that attackable, again, she's a tough out. Clay court, I think it's actually tougher for people to attack her. The final was fun to watch. Like, her opponent just when she was up 4-3, you're like, okay, does she believe enough? And she didn't. It was just errors at that point because
Yeah.
she was able to do some phenomenal things throughout the 2 weeks and obviously beat Aryna, and um, it was good to watch.
Karolina Muchova absolutely had a chance in that final. I really thought she was going to take it for a second, and you're right. I think she had a few chances at a break at 4-3 even, or even the game before, and she
Mhm.
just couldn't quite take it. I've
Yeah.
got her down actually in terms of 5 names I wanted to discuss because
Mhm.
I feel like well, you can confirm the service action is nice.
Mhm.
Generally, the transition game is really good. I honestly thought she played a lovely grass court game on a clay court in a way. There was like slice
Yeah.
approaches and stuff. She
Mhm.
should be dangerous at this tournament, right? Like
Of
she's got a
course.
real chance.
Yeah, and confident, right?
Yeah,
So, no, she's got a great all court game. Everything's good, right? She does everything well. She hits a lot of variety of different shots. She can come in.
yeah,
The question is going to be on grass is what is she going to do? Is she going to attack? Is she going to stay back? I think, I don't know what her coach is advising, but when you've got an all court game like that, you for sure want to try to attack
yeah,
and be aggressive and try to take the racket out of your opponent's hands whenever you can and see what happens. And she handled herself great. I was rooting for her. I thought it was a great story if she could pull it off. Obviously, I wasn't rooting for her in the semis, but
yeah.
um,
Fair.
yeah, but still, like she handled the moment in that match, better than Aryna did, and hats off to her for doing that. So
Yeah. Can we talk a bit about Aryna actually?
yeah,
Because
sure.
obviously for me on paper, the improvements you guys have made that should really put Sabalenka right up there, maybe the favorite for me in terms of what she's been doing with the serve all season, repeatability of first strike tennis.
Mhm.
There's no reason she shouldn't be more of a favourite at Wimbledon than she was at the French, and she got to the semis of the
Mhm.
French. So she's still playing great. She had a match point, of course, to make the final. She was very close. I feel like she's got a really good chance here. What were your thoughts, Gavin?
Well, I think she has a good chance against anyone now. Aryna, in my opinion, at this point, if she's on top of her game and feeling confident, then she's the favorite, whoever she plays. And obviously, I'd love to see her win the tournament. So yeah, I think it just comes down to the confidence, how you're feeling as you progress through the tournament. I think sometimes your toss got a little too high, in these last few months, and then you can hesitate, when it matters. But when she has some matches now where her first serve percentage is at 70%, and when she's doing that, she's very difficult to beat. Obviously on grass, Rybakina poses a problem and is right there with her. I think the two of them are legitimate contenders to win this. Obviously, Rybakina's already done it. So I wish Aryna the best of luck, and I hope that she really trusts herself and all the work she's done in the last 8 months to get herself where she's at, because it's one of the great turnarounds in tennis that you don't normally see too often. And anyone that's worked with her will tell you she's at practice every time she's supposed to be. She warms up the way she's supposed to warm up. She's ready to do the things she needs to do to be a professional. And no one on the outside, unless you're around it, sees all that stuff and the amount of work it takes and the discipline. And she has all those things. So that's why I've encouraged her from the beginning that if you can get these pieces in place, like watch out, because she's to me, just a beast on court. Even though she lost in the semifinals, she fought her ass off to the last point. And even though she wasn't necessarily, I haven't talked to her about that match at all, but I'm sure she doesn't feel she played that well, and yet she's right there. So I think if she serves a high percentage off her first serve, obviously keeps her second serve from being attacked and is making it consistently, then she's got as good a chance as anybody of winning the tournament. And you just hope to don't think about the result. You've got 7 matches to win. Sit down with Anton, figure out how we're approaching every match. Just take it one step at a time, because they did a really good job of doing that in Australia. And once she can start getting a little momentum and get through those first few rounds and the confidence builds, watch out.
I think one thing I wanted touch on, actually. And
Mm.
you know this very well, Gavin, but there'll be viewers that maybe aren't as aware, so it would be good to flesh it out. I'd like to compare like Sabalenka's chances compared
Mm.
to somebody like Kvitova, another massive server, right? Big, massive shots. There are obvious reasons, though, why Kvitova is less of a surefire bet than Sabalenka, right? Can you kind of go into that a little bit? Because obviously Kvitova won a title really recently, and actually when she's playing her best tennis, she is so hard to play, right? But very flat shots, right? You talked about how much spin
Mm.
Sabalenka's now added to her forehand and backhand, and why that's even a good thing on grass, I guess. Well, I would imagine so, because it's just repeatable first strike tennis, right? And that's what you need.
Yeah, I think when Kvitova is on, she's going to be difficult for everyone. Obviously, her serve, I think, she gets a little too flat, especially off the second, and she doesn't hit up and get enough spin on it to where she can really get it out of people's strike zone and away. But when she's hitting that out wide serve on the ad side and getting it away from you, she's
Yeah.
backs it up with great groundies. She's a good mover. Obviously not as Iga or Coco, but you again trying to find like this perfect player, which doesn't really exist. And so you're looking at what the weapons they bring to the table, and she has weapons. So she's in every match she plays. Can she win seven? I don't know, but she can sure make it difficult for whoever she's playing, because she backs it up again with a forehand that can really hurt you. So we'll see what happens, because she's obviously playing well,
Yeah.
and it'll come down to what your draw is, and do you get some momentum going early? Because if you're nervous and you're hitting that flat and you're missing, things can go wrong, and it's best out of three and you're out of the tournament. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, she's a phenomenal grass court player, obviously.
A few other names that came to mind. So they're the kind of five that really sort of set aside. But other names that I'd like to delve into. Certainly, I don't know if people will even rate Krejcikova as a grass quarter, right? But I see potential in Krejcikova's game. She might not have the biggest groundies, right?
Mhm.
And that might be a thing that's holding her back. But I like her serve. I think her sliding serve in the juice court is lovely. She's got a
Mhm.
great transition game again, maybe not as big a factor, but can be big on pressure points. And
Mhm.
Krejcikova, for me, is a pressure player. She's good
Mhm.
under pressure generally. She's quite good at absorbing that. Do you kind of rate her at this tournament, or do you really think it will take a power player to kind of just knock her off the court, and that's going to be that?
Yeah, I think definitely like the arena is a problem for her, and so is Rybakina. But she moves the ball around really well on the grass. That should help her a lot. Certainly, her ability to change the spins off the serve. If you can hit that slice serve, it's very hard to attack it. So yeah, I think you brought up a great point. I haven't watched her as much as I've watched a lot of the others, but again, you're talking about somebody that's dangerous every time you play him, and has beaten virtually everybody. So you get on a roll and you get a little confidence, and watch out. The women's game, it fluctuates. Iga is, I thought, on clay. Obviously, you're going to go, yeah, she's going to win the tournament. Somebody has to really do something to get her out of that now. On grass, you're not going to say that. Novak, certainly every match he goes into, he's a favorite. So somebody has to actually hit him off the court. The chances of him beating himself, especially with historically what's on the line, is tough. So in the women, there's not a clear cut grass court favorite. Rybakina will go in because she's won it. Aryna, especially her first strike ability, is as good as it gets out there. Is in the match with whoever she plays. And then I would say it's Iga. And then you start talking about these other girls, like Kvitova is there for sure.
We've also got Jabeur down, Garcia, Gauff, Ostapenko.
Yeah, so Jabeur, obviously, with her ability to mix the point up, and she beats you in a different way, right? It's just the ability to move the ball around different spins, and got to the final last year, so she's clearly, obviously, in the conversation. Karolina Garcia, if she's confident, if anything, she gets too aggressive sometimes and isn't giving her opponent enough chances to beat themselves. Because when she feels good, like we played her in the tour finals last year, and she was serving huge
Yeah, that was some
and just
match.
didn't get a lot of looks. And And remember, Aryna had just beaten the number one, number two, and number three players in the world consecutively.
Yeah.
And so Aryna didn't play badly. That was a really fun match to watch, even though we lost, which always sucks. But she played well, to her credit. But to play that level for 7 matches is tough if you're always trying to take it early and come in. But she's somebody that can come in, and she's a very
Yeah.
good athlete. So obviously, sometimes her forehand gets a little shaky and can cause her some problems. But again, if she gets on a roll early and is feeling confident about what she's doing, she can hurt you, and so she's got to be in that conversation. Outside of that, who knows? But I think it really just starts with Rybakina, Aryna, Iga, and then from there on. I mean, Gauff struggles, can win a lot of matches, and she doesn't get beat by people that are, not that close to her level, and doesn't give matches away and stuff. But the first strike ability on those courts is tough for her.
The serve's interesting actually because there's a lot of potential there, right? There's a lot of pace, certainly, and there's times when I've watched her and I'm thinking this, she's so good on serve. But then there's other ones where it's the complete opposite. Any idea what's going on there? Because it does hold her back. It will hold her back on grass courts for sure, right? She needs a way of finishing the points early every so often. At least she can't just be passive for the matches against these power players. So, any thoughts?
No, I've looked at her serve. She does a lot of things right, like gets her left arm inverted. I think she's got her body is lined up properly, but her right arm and what she's trying to do with that is where there is a problem. And specifically on the second serve, I don't think that she gets the toss in the right place to where she can consistently hit up on it and doesn't extend with her right leg and therefore with her right arm. I mean, I've stood watching her where she can hit a serves 125 miles an hour. But the key in tennis, right, is to be able to hit it heavy with pace at 4-all in the third if you have to, down break point and hit your spots. That's shown to be a problem. That tells you that there's a technical flaw in there. And everybody knows this with her. It's just a question of fixing it. They'll say the same thing about her grip on her forehand, but Iga's grip's right there with her and not that big of a
Yeah.
difference in once she's won slam. So can't just say it's the grip. I think on her forehand, the way she winds it sometimes is a problem. She doesn't get her arm just turned at 90 degrees and then just snap it out. And then it gets loopy and she's just trying to spin it and get it in. And then you can't really hurt your opponent and your opponent can hurt you. But her serve, I actually think she's not as tall as like Aryna or Rybakina, but if you were working with that, you would take the mentality more of what Alcaraz is doing, and that you're hitting really hard, heavy first serves with spin on them, getting them out of your opponent's strike zone, and now you're backing it up with the best mover, one of the best movers out there. She competes her ass off, and it gives her a better chance to win. When she starts going for first serve aces and then percentage drops, there's all that pressure of your second serve, not just getting it in, but getting it into the point where it can attack, your opponent can't attack it.
Yeah.
And that's where she ends up with a problem. I think her serve is easily fixable, and the
Yeah.
difference it would make is dramatic. We'll see. I know they must. Everybody knows that it's an issue. They have to be working on it. So it's just a question of what you're working on, and you have to break your serve down into, because your body's going to go wherever your toss arm goes, right? So if your toss arm goes forward, you go forward. If your toss arm pulls down, you pull down. Your toss arm goes to the right and you pull up, it brings your shoulder up with it. And sometimes she's going that way, and then it's flattened out, or that's what Aryna used to do, and sometimes still does. The shoulders have to exchange. They can't go around this way and go flat. You'll just, under pressure, you'll never make it. It's just too difficult. Other pieces of it, they're already there. I think she's just missing a piece or two, and then who knows?
Yeah.
Because if you can get confident, remember, it's all confidence on what you can do in critical moments. She's not there yet with her forehand, but she's 19, right? Isn't she
Yeah.
19?
She's still 19. Yeah, she's 19.
Yeah, and then again, you look at the way that tennis works. It's such a difficult animal. She's been out in the public's eye since she's 16. It's an enormous amount of pressure to handle when people are telling you you're all that and this. I mean, that was one of the things that I think really affected Aryna because, you look at her and you go, okay, she can be number one, she can be this but you're not telling her how. And so now that pressure switches to there's something wrong with me. I'm not doing what I should be doing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can be number one, but is Alcaraz number one in the world if he's got a forehand that's hit or miss? No, it's not possible. The men are too good. And when you look at Aryna, her forehand at was just hit or miss. It was so flat. There's not enough shape on it. She's not realizing how much impact she can have on her opponent by hitting with a little more spin and with pressure and constantly punishing them. Because, we touched on this, probably 6 months ago. What I always appreciated about watching her before I ever met her was like she's in nightmare scenarios, double faulting 25 times and still fighting. Who does that? Like most people, it's just tank and it's over. And the last match I watched it was with Gauff before I met her. She double faulted 23 times, and I think Gauff double faulted 18.
Yeah. I know the one you mean. Because
Yeah.
it was like September-ish, I don't know, October. And actually, Goff's quite similar. She also will compete, and there's stuff technically going wrong, but she just keeps going and going and going.
Hats
Like,
off to him because I couldn't do that. And
yeah.
so again, with Gauff, like if she gets more confident off that forehand side, and I think like to do that, she's even with that grip, she's just got to turn this down. And from here, then the hand can unwind and snap out. But with that grip, when you go this way and up, and so your hand gets way up above your elbow, that rolls this forward, and now you have to try to muscle it. So if you look at all the elite forehands like Novak's, obviously Rogers, and Rafa, and what they're doing, the arm is internally rotated here. The racket head's vertical. And so now the racket head can roll around the hand, the forearm rolls around the elbow, and then the shoulder, and then it rolls around the shoulder and out. It becomes a stretch reflex. It's not muscled. And when I say by muscle is that you have to hit it linear this way. So you have to try to drop under it and loop it. That is really difficult to do under pressure, and you can't hurt anyone. So her, you look at that and you go, she's top 10 in the world and she's flawed. Where is it? Where is she if she can get this going? And again, she's 19. So hopefully she just doesn't even listen to all the crap of people like us talking about the pressure of what you should or shouldn't do. Because what I'm saying by that is like, if you start listening to all that about what you're supposed to be, then you never get there. I know generationally things get better, but I think in some ways there's a lot of things that haven't gotten better. So then the idea of understanding how to play the game, Jose Aguirre always talks about that when I see him. He's like, it's a game. You have to remember it's a game. Lobs can win games. Slice backhands win games. You've got to change the height, the pace, and you've got to be able to think out there. And the only way you can do that is if you can execute your shots.
Yeah.
So, that type of style has kind of gotten lost now because everybody just kind of stands back and whoever hits the ball bigger from the backcourt wins. And I think that the ability of, what someone like Novak does in terms of understanding a game and how to play it, Ash Barty was like that. Change the spins up, It's not like she had all these huge shots, but she really knew how to win points. And that's what, I've tried to encourage, with Aryna, because when you hit the ball that big and you can hurt people, if you understand the game side of it as well, then now you got the best of both worlds, right? Because you can take the racket out of their hand, but you can also do all these other things. Aryna's a very good volleyer. She's, off the forehand, when she gets a mid-court ball sitter, she finishes it. It's not a shot she misses too often. Her up the line backhand, and she's one of the few people that can hit an inside out backhand effectively.
Yeah.
You would never tell someone to do it, but you can't tell her not to do it because she's good at it. You
Yeah.
know? So with when you look back at the game back then, I mean, it was different rackets and all these other things. But what I like about now with the different, you know, ability to look back at all these different matches and stuff like that, you look back technically at what people were doing, and it's like, yeah, Navratilova had it right off her serve. She had it right off her volleys. Her forehand is, off the left side. She's here. Not a lot changed with that, but and obviously Steffi's forehand was a monster. It'd drive every single female player absolutely batshit crazy in today's tennis. Tell me who's going to kick Monica Seles' ass in the modern game. First of all, I worked for her briefly as a hitting partner. The angles were like this.
Ah.
So all you did was run, and it was 100 degrees in Florida, right? So
Ah.
you're sitting in the hotel every night, just going like, I don't think I have legs left. Um, but she had a great return to serve, right? Her serve was super effective in terms of getting you out of position, and she could generate pace off both sides. And the way she came over it off both sides just causes you a lot of problems. Obviously, what happened to her is terrible. Um, the amount of slams she had won by the time she was 20 or whatever is just unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, and a phenomenal competitor under pressure. Everyone that's had a great forehand has certain common things in there. I pulled up Steffi's forehand, and there you see the racket's vertical, arms here. She's not going like taking her arm, doing this big loopy swing like we were taught, trying to get spin on it. Now, her racket was vertical, and I think that what makes it look like a loop, but that's not what she was doing, and she was hitting the crap out of it. She had a heavy, heavy forehand, and but it's the same thing. Like all of us are limited by how our body's built. Your and I shoulders are built the same. Your humerus is a ball socket joint, so it has to roll in the joint like that. So there's only so many ways that you can hit it maximally, if that makes sense. And it's an underhand throwing motion, right? On a forehand. It's essentially what you're doing. Backhand is essentially a frisbee because you're putting it on stretch reflex and then releasing it, right?
Mm.
So when you look at a one-hander, when you pull a one-hander back, you pull it back, it naturally stretches your shoulder out. And if you invert it, well, now it winds around, drops, and whips out. And under pressure, it's fluid. And the whole challenge in pro tennis is to create fluid shots that you technically are fluid, so that when the pressure of the moment hits, the technical side doesn't inhibit you. Any little hesitation in this, you're in trouble
Yeah.
because it's not a fluid shot in terms of using the stretch reflex in your arms. You're trying to just hit a ball hard,
Yeah.
and you hesitate even a little bit, and then you're in big trouble.
Mm.
So yeah, I appreciate Salas a lot, and I think she would enjoy playing any of these people today.
Yeah.
She'd be a nightmare. The return game is just so good, right?
Yeah. And I think that's Iga's maybe one of the only people I can think of that can match that sort of amazing feel off the return. We'll get it deep every time. That's actually one of the reasons I still rate her here. We're talking about service problems and movement,
Mm-hmm.
but she can still play first strike tennis on the opponent's
Mm-hmm.
return games.
Yeah.
On their service games even. So she'll have a decent chance if she can put it
No,
all
for sure.
together.
She's number one in the world. She's going to be in the match. It's
Yeah.
just a question of whether or not she can be effective enough in the big moments to, because was it Rybakina that beat her last year? No, Rybakina beat her in Australia. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, a first strike tennis got her in trouble, right?
Yeah.
So that could be a problem. But again, if she gets a good draw and she's not playing, any of those people till the final, then who knows?
Obviously, you touched on a lot there, and just to kind of tie it all together, talk
Mm.
about finish off with them, who you're most confident in. Certainly, you talk about having a sort of complete game, being able to play the game. Ash
Mhm.
Barty being one of those people. When I was watching the French, Ash Barty's name came to mind so often because of Karolina Muchova.
Yeah,
Actually,
very
she's
similar.
you're talking about the different shapes and the way
Mhm.
she can play the ball so often. She's a great player of the game. She really
Absolutely.
is. So I don't know
Yeah.
how high I put her, Gavin, but honestly, I'm quite high on her at the moment. I'd be tempted to put her top 3. I really like her chances.
If she stays within herself, she's going to be a very difficult out because she
Yeah,
can play an all-court game. And when I say play within yourself, what it means is you're not trying to hit, these outrageous winners so early in the point because you feel the anxiety of the moment or whatever. It's trusting that if you hit deep, effective cross-court balls, put your opponent on pressure, under pressure. You switch the dynamic. So if she can do that, then she's in any conversation you're having in terms of that. No clear flaws. Obviously, things can get better, but no overwhelming flaw. So,
yeah,
yeah, I would say you're right.
yeah. Have you got somebody in? I guess you probably would back, Aryna, I'd imagine.
We haven't, our schedules haven't worked, and I haven't seen her since, just before Australia and stuff, but I
Yeah,
just know everything Arena's been through.
yeah,
And so, do I want her to win Wimbledon? Of course I do.
yeah,
And she's, people, like, I even saw back, and you see these interviews and they're just like, well, it's all our emotions and it's all this. And yeah, I get it. But, this is somebody that really wants to win, that's willing to work her ass off to get it. She's been through a lot of adversity to have to get where she's at. You can argue that everybody has, I guess, but there's just, I know a lot, the low moments for her were super low. It's just horrible when that's all playing out for everyone. And so now to see her in the conversation in every tournament is awesome. And I hope she, again, just trusts herself in those key moments and don't feel like you've got to do too much. You don't. You're the biggest, she's the biggest hitter on tour. And just trust, that you make big, heavy shots and big moments, you're going to cause some damage with everyone and you're in the match with everyone. She is not an easy out. So, yeah, I would 100% want her to win it. I would say Rybakina is the next in line. Jabeur, she can't hurt you quite as much all the time. She has to play really well for 7 matches to win it. Again, super nice person, and she'll be in the conversation with everyone. We'll see if Kvitova continues on this role, which she's clearly capable of doing. And then does Iga, adjust to the situation, and then hopefully Muchova, with her recent success, is able to transition to grass and make it a conversation. And we'll see.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a great wrap up, Gavin, and a good place to finish up. Thanks very much for coming on again. For those who didn't catch the last one, Gavin from Sports Science Lab. Please go check him out. Thanks very much for joining us on the Online Tennis Podcast. We'll catch you very soon over Wimbledon, of course. Catch you next time. Cheers, everybody.